How do we explain the fault lines like Sati Pratha, the caste system, and Gungat in Hindu culture that they have converted in the horrendous form that they were practiced in the history, that they have become a tool in the hands of particular people to spew venom on Sanatan Dharma? How do we explain that current form that they exist in?
You're from Guru Gobind Singh University. Which stream, please?
So BBLLB.
PBL. Now, in terms of the primary literature, or at the very least credible secondary literature, what have you read on Sati? Please give the mic. I'd like to have a conversation. Please go ahead. I'm just trying to understand what is the source or the basis of a particular opinion so that I'm in a better position to respond. Please go ahead.
So there is a book called Sonali Bansal where Raja Ram Mohan Roy has been vehemently opposing the burning of women on the pyre of their husband.
Right.
And yeah, that's primarily the source I am informed in which the sati is being practiced. Similarly, on the debate of hijab,
Right.
they also said that in Hinduism maybe there is Gungat.
Right.
On the caste system, we discriminate against our own people.
Right.
So how do we explain all that? How these things turned into a weapon? How these things, their present form? That's my question, sir.
Okay. So the good part of at least Sati is there is enough literature from the opposite point of view, not denying the existence or occurrence of Sati. So let's not deny its existence or occurrence. I think the question is more about the scale and the demonization of a particular society, citing this as the instance. So one of the things that I happened to touch upon during the course of the writing of the first book is two specific episodes or cultural events in Bharat were used significantly to generate contributions from England for missionary activity in this country. One is the Jagannath Rath Yatra, and the second is Sati. There's a missionary who goes by the name Claudius Buchanan, who features significantly in the discussions surrounding the need for more establishment support for missionary activity in this country. And that discussion happens around the 1919 Government of India Act. So let me give you just a short backdrop and then I'll come to the question straight. Prior to 1858, the reins of power are primarily in the hands of the company, right? Until 1858, there's a gradual shift where the Crown, the Parliament of Britain, both not being the same obviously, and the evangelical groups of UK, that means England, Scotland and Ireland, who had a problem with the fact that the company and a corporate entity was in charge of such a large piece of real estate. And from being merely a commercial mercantile entity, it had morphed into a political entity because it had its own armies. And the snowballing of the rebellion, so to speak, into a situation which effectively loosened or at least threatened to loosen the grip of the English onto this particular land was seen primarily as a mistake of the company and its corporate greed. Until then, while missionary activity started from the early mid-1600s, yes, mid-1600s. In fact, because one of the earliest resolutions that was passed by the directors of the East India Company, English East India Company, was that they would bring the message of the gospel to this country. That was one of their official resolutions, and this was in the 17th century. That much is said with support. But since they were primarily interested in business, they did not want to ruffle too many feathers, and therefore missionary activity would come in trickles, primarily for two things. One, the English establishment here had to be protected from heathen contamination, and their own Christian needs had to be met because they'd come with their families. So schools had to be established, chapels had to be established, so on and so forth. So that was the first wave. But this trickle gradually increased in size and scale and in terms of its reach. And by the time it came to 1857, the missionaries sensed a fantastic opportunity to take away the reins of power from the company so that the crown, which was effectively seen as the protector of Christendom, insofar as UK is concerned, is given greater responsibility and greater say over the affairs of Bharat or the British territories in India. If you read the literature around this period and the pamphlets that were circulated by missionaries in their country as well as within their own societies in this country, they decided to latch on to two specific cultural events. One is negative and the other is positive, but both were projected in negative light to get missionary contributions or financial contributions. The word juggernaut, which effectively comes from the Jagannath Yatra, which is common knowledge, was coined by Claudius Buchanan. And he said that this is such a dark religion that during this Rath Yatra, people throw themselves under the wheel and die. And therefore, these people need to be saved from their own religion. That started the never-ending project of reforming the Hindu faith. Along with this, Sati was also projected. Now, Ms. Meenakshi Jain or Dr. Meenakshi Jain, in her book on Sati, tries to address the question from an empirical perspective to say, how many parts of this country and in how many instances can you actually cite of Sati happening at such a rampant scale for it to come to represent this particular culture. Now, the demonization of Sanatana Dharma and the Hindu society citing Sati, if you want an indication of it, I will give you an international instrument which I have cited in the book, wherein of all the abhorrent practices which inflict injury upon human dignity, guess which practice was cited as one of them? Sati. So the only thing that you seem to think or you can conceive of when it comes to the society are untouchability, Sati, dowry, and Jagannath Yatra. Now that answers one part of the question. Now, do I agree with Sati? No, I don't. I'm saying that you have chosen a handful of instances to paint an entire society. We are being told that generalization of any particular community citing the conduct of a particular handful amounts to stereotyping. I'm asking, is it fair for you to do this with us? That's one. Second, as far as Parda is concerned, should it continue today? Assuming that circumstances have not changed between medieval Bharat and today, I would say it has no reason to change. But unfortunately, I don't think the situation has changed across the country. I am saying that the medieval mindset continues to exist in certain parts of the country. I am making that statement. And therefore, in those instances, when people do something to protect themselves, I would say I'm in no position to judge them and their circumstances. In the princely state of Hyderabad, the supposed richest princely state and perhaps the largest, the ruler's entourage would willy-nilly pick up women from other communities. I should know this, I come from that state. We have experienced it. At least our previous generations have experienced it. The non-majority population or the non-ruling population, although the majority population, was treated as a hostage population. And you should ask yourself how that population was used to negotiate with the Indian Union around the period of Operation Polo. Correct. In light of this, it's convenient to start with the presumption that this is a fundamentally backward society without giving it some slack and cutting it some slack in terms of the brutal, ruthless, savage experience that it has been put through, at the very least since the 10th century or the 11th century. And which is I would say, which has gone on and on and on. It's one thing to ask whether some of these practices merit existence today, but it's another thing to question why did they start in the first place? I mean, people were not idiots to jump into the fire, right? Something must have triggered it. So I would say, perhaps avoid the lazy presumption and conclusion that this is a feature of an inherently regressive society, and do more justice to your own intelligence by reading a bit more on the subject. And I don't mean you, this is not a personal comment. I'm saying in general, so please don't take it personally. So I believe that a lot of things that we are fed and which we spew hasn't been examined with the rigor that it merits. And maybe perhaps I'm contributing my limited might to it in terms of unpacking those presumptions. Next.